Hello everybody, it's Adam Dye, amateur radio call sign N4NT, and this video the topic is going to be, should you park on a calling frequency? Before we get into that, I'd like to mention that I have recently written a book and it is available on Amazon. The name of the book is Net Control, a practical guide to FM repeater net calling. And the link will be in the description of this video where you can purchase that book for just $9.99 on Amazon. And even if you're calling an HF net or some other type of net, it's a very useful guide to help give you some ideas and some things to help you along to avoid confusion and make sure that everyone gets a chance to participate. All right, so getting into the topic of our video, should you park on a calling frequency? So, should you hold a QSO on a calling frequency during any kind of activations like POTA or SOTA, or if you make contact with someone on said frequency, or should you move? This topic can cause a lot of debate in the ham radio community, and the truth is it's not always black and white. In this video, we're going to break it down in a practical, real-world way so you can make the right call on the air. Let's define what we're talking about exactly. Calling frequency is it's generally understood to be a place where you go to make the initial contact and not carry on a long conversation. Now that is a etiquette as opposed to a rule violation. There's nothing in the FCC rules or any kind of laws or anything like that that says this. It's just kind of an established practice over the years. Gentleman's agreement, which also includes YLs, of course. Think of it like the front desk. You go there and you check in, but you don't hang out there all day. You go up to your room. So common examples of a calling frequency would be 146.520 on 2 meters. And there's also places on 70 centimeter band. Pretty much any band has a known calling frequency, and you can look that up on the ARRL band plan and other sources. You can also have these on HF as well. Here's the question. Let's say you're doing parks on the air or summits on the air activation. Is it okay to stay on that calling frequency and work the pileup? Well, technically, as I said before, there's no rule that says you can't, but there's a strong expectation in the hobby about how these frequencies are used and why this can be a problem. So let's talk about why staying on a calling frequency can be an issue. First of all, it blocks access. Other operators can't use that frequency to make their own initial contacts. Second, it slows things down overall. Calling frequencies are meant to keep traffic moving and not bottleneck it. And third, it does create friction. If you're not technically violating a rule, you're going against widely accepted operational practice, and that's where the complaints start. One example I can give too of something that took place several years ago in my area. There was a Echolink net that was established in the area, and the person put that Echolink network on 146.520. One of the things I always like to do is keep 5.2 in the scan on my radio, and I would occasionally use it to call and so forth, and those Echolink nodes seemed to just sort of break in on top of you like it had no knowledge that you were there. And that got to be pretty annoying to the point where I was locking that frequency out of my scan. I still, here in my shack, I live very close to the interstate in my community. So I love to scan that frequency because you can catch people traveling through the area sometimes calling on that frequency if they're not aware of our local repeaters, and they may actually just travel up and down the interstate calling out on 5.2 to see what kind of simplex conversation. But there are some reasons why it might be okay, and let's be fair, there are situations where it makes sense. If the band is quiet and you're not interfering with anyone, short-term use probably isn't a big deal. And thinking of SOTA activations in particular, I don't hear a lot of POTA on these frequencies myself, but I'm sure they probably do that. Most of what I've worked POTA-wise has been on HF. But those may be good reasons because you're going to do these activations for a limited amount of time, especially if you're going to be operating like 2 meters, 70 centimeters, something like that. You don't want people having to chase you all over the spectrum, because a lot of people you may work, it may be mobile, portable, something like that, and they're not monitoring any kind of spotting software where you could potentially be spotted. So there may be a good reason for that. Also, like in my area, and I'm sure a lot of you out there in your areas, and of course, these calling frequencies, let me say, are specific to the United States. Other countries may have other calling frequencies, but the same principle applies regardless of your calling frequencies. But if you if you live in an area where these calling frequencies are not used that much, you don't hear a lot of activity, then in a situation like this where you're doing an activation or something, contest or something like that, it may not be such a big deal to occupy these frequencies or park on these frequencies as opposed to moving somewhere else. You don't really, when you're doing an activation or a contest even, you're typically making the contact, exchanging the report and a few pleasantries at best, and then moving on to the next contact and trying to make as many as possible. So that is not really practical of going to the calling frequency, making the contact, QSYing, coming back. So that's not a reasonable expectation. And if you're running QRP, you finally get a pileup going, moving could cost you contacts. And sometimes, especially on VHF, there may not be that many clear frequencies available. So there's always exceptions. So let's look at, talk about some best practices. But here's the standard that most experienced operators follow. Use the calling frequency to make contact and move, especially if you're just going to be rag chewing, something like that, where you're going to occupy the frequency for some time. Even simply moving up 5, something like that, it keeps things flowing. Move to where you're not going to interfere. If you absolutely have to stay for a short period, keep the transmissions tight, efficient, and be ready to yield if someone else would need the frequency in an emergency or something like that. And a lot of these activations and contest operating procedures typically do that. There's very short, tight conversations, and you have breaks in between, so something should arise. Then, and all these operators that I have come across that operate these type of activities are very courteous operators. They put a lot into what they are doing. They don't want to give what they are representing or themselves either a bad name. But the modern realities of all this is with the spotting networks and apps, you don't have to rely on calling frequencies like we used to. Sometimes it may be a little more difficult if somebody's in a car, but even now there's smartphone apps for spotting. A lot of folks have radios where they can operate from their smartphone, and so they have the spotting and everything integrated into it. And so once you're spotted, the chasers will find you. I haven't personally worked any SOTA or POTA operations myself as far as activating, but I always try to give those folks, when I see them on the air, I try to give them the contact. I try to work them as much as possible. So the chasers will find you if you're spotted, and this makes it even more practical to move off an operating or working frequency. This is one of those things, though, you just have to fill out based on the area that you're in, because VHF simplex operations are very area specific. You can get a lot of range out of those things, but nothing compared to when you get on HF and things are running worldwide, or even linked repeater systems, which I know repeaters don't count in these type of operating activities. You have to have simplex contacts. And one of the things, I did do some research on the SOTA and POTA rules, and I couldn't find anything where it specifically mentioned working on calling frequencies or not working on calling frequencies, or what you should do. I think their rules kind of look at other things, and they just leave that particular operating practice up to the best practices of the particular amateur. So the bottom line of everything is calling frequencies are not considered working frequencies. Can you stay there? Sometimes, yes. Should you? Usually not. Good operating practice isn't just about what you can do. It's about what works best for everyone on the band. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you would, give us a like, subscribe if you haven't already, share the video, make some comments. Anything you can do to help us would be greatly appreciated. Check out the link for my book. And until next time, this is Adam Dye, amateur radio call sign N4NT, saying 7-3.